I stood on the porch with the gift still in my hands, watching the fairy lights blink through their kitchen window. Laughter spilled out, champagne flutes, toasts, a string quartet. My granddaughter twirled in white as if the world had always belonged to her. It was adults only, she'd said. After diaper changes, school pickups, late-night fevers, and college tuition, I was no longer adult enough to attend the wedding of the girl I once called my whole heart. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. It started with a photo. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, half scrolling through my phone when the image stopped me cold. Sam, my daughter, in a long ivory dress, barefoot in a sunlit field, her hand tucked into Greg's like she'd been doing it her whole life. There were fairy lights strung between trees in the background and a sign, handwritten, rustic, perfect for Instagram. The Jeffersons, Esther, 2025. I blinked once, twice. The caption, married my best friend this weekend. Couldn't be more grateful. Hearts had just married new beginnings. This weekend. I stared at the date. 3 days ago, I hadn't gotten an invitation. I hadn't even known there was a wedding. For a second, I told myself maybe it was an elopement. Maybe it happened fast. Maybe, God, maybe she'd tried to call and I'd missed it. But my phone was always on, always near. I would have heard. I would have felt it. I refreshed the post. The likes were climbing. 218, 219. The comments were a scroll of hearts and congratulations. Friends from high school, college, people I didn't know. But none of them were me. None of them had raised her. Linda came in from the garden, brushing dirt off her knees. You okay? I just handed her the phone, not trusting my voice. She squinted at the screen. Her eyes widened. Is that Sam? She got married? I nodded. 3 days ago, Linda sat across from me, her face softening. She didn't invite you. No, I said, and the word cut through me like glass. She didn't even tell you? I shook my head. There was a long silence between us. Then Linda reached across the table and put her hand over mine. You need to go over there, and I did. Not to fight, not to accuse, just to understand. Greg answered the door when I knocked. He looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. Sweatpants, barefoot, beer in hand, even though it was barely 6. His expression didn't change when he saw me. No smile, no apology. Eleanor. I'd like to speak with Sam. He stepped aside without a word. She was in the kitchen, rinsing a wine glass. Her hair was up in a bun, casual, pretty. She turned when she heard me, a flicker of surprise flashing across her face. Oh, hey. I stood there, unsure where to begin. I saw the photo. Her gaze dropped to the sink. Yeah, it was a beautiful day. I didn't even know there was a wedding. She didn't respond. I swallowed. Why wasn't I invited? She glanced at me, then looked back down. We kept it small. Adults only. I stared at her. Adults only? It was what we wanted, she said, as if that explained everything. I'm your mother, Sam. I know. I raised you, every scraped knee, every fever, every panic attack in middle school. I was there. She flinched but didn't look at me. It wasn't personal. It feels personal. It wasn't meant to be. We just wanted peace. No tension, no drama. I stepped closer. Did Greg tell you not to invite me? Her eyes finally met mine. This wasn't about Greg. But her tone betrayed her. Flat. Practiced. I shook my head. You didn't even call me, Sam. We were overwhelmed, planning everything. It happened fast. I laughed. Bitter. Fast? You've been engaged for 9 months. She was silent. I don't recognize you, I said. You used to talk to me about everything. Now I find out you're married on Instagram. It's my life, she said, her voice tightening. I get to choose who's in it. I stared at her, stunned. And I'm not? She looked down again. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I turned and walked out. I couldn't bear to stand in that kitchen one more second. When I got home, Linda was waiting. I didn't say anything, just dropped my purse and sat down hard on the couch. She knelt in front of me. What happened? She said it was adults only, I murmured. Linda blinked. She's 31. I let out a soft, pained laugh. Apparently, I'm not adult enough. She squeezed my hands. This isn't just thoughtless, Eleanor. It's cruel. I didn't argue, because somewhere in the silence, I'd felt it too. Something deeper, something colder. This wasn't just a missed invitation, it was the beginning of an erasure. By Wednesday morning, the photos were everywhere. It wasn't just Sam's post anymore. It was tagged pictures, reels, slow-motion drone shots from above the ceremony. I didn't seek them out, but the algorithm knew better. Every time I opened my phone, there they were, Greg lifting her veil in golden hour light, a champagne tower with sparklers, Sam's dress flowing like water across a manicured lawn. I scrolled without blinking, thumb moving on its own. Frame by frame, I watched the version of my daughter who no longer needed me. The venue was some kind of vineyard, tucked in the California hills. Everything looked expensive in that tasteless, performative way. Greg's family posed front and center in almost every photo. His father, stiff in a tuxedo, one hand always on Greg's shoulder. His mother, draped in navy silk, wearing the kind of smile that said she owned the place. Linda walked into the living room, holding a pair of gardening gloves. She paused when she saw me hunched over the screen again. "Eleanor," she said gently, "you've got to stop doing this to yourself." I didn't look up. "Just a few more." She sat beside me. "It won't help." "I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to understand." A video started playing, Sam twirling under string lights, her laugh echoing faintly through the music. She looked happy, but only at first glance. I paused it and stared. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. Linda leaned in. "That's not joy. That's performance." "She used to smile differently," I murmured. "She used to laugh with her whole face." I turned the volume up on another clip. Greg's voice boomed during the toast, thanking his parents for years of support and generosity. Sam stood beside him, nodding like she meant it. I muted the sound. "She let them replace me," I whispered, "and they were happy to do it." There was a knock at the door. Linda went to answer it while I sat frozen on the couch, phone still in hand. Her voice lifted slightly in greeting. Then I heard a familiar one reply, low, gravelly, patient. "Pastor Collins," I said when he stepped inside, his worn Bible tucked under one arm. He looked older than the last time I saw him. Maybe it was the lighting, or maybe grief just makes everything look farther away. "I was driving through town," he said, "and figured I'd check in." Linda offered him tea. He declined with a kind smile. I waited for the questions, the "how are you" and the "have you prayed on it?" But he just stood for a moment, studying me like someone reading scripture by memory. "Do you remember when Sam was baptized?" he asked. I nodded. "She wore those ridiculous white slippers, kept kicking them off. She ran straight to you afterward, soaked, laughing." I smiled, then immediately felt it falter. "You were her whole world then," he said. "That doesn't just disappear." I shook my head. "She erased me, and she didn't even flinch." He came closer, crouched down like he used to during youth sessions. "You taught her grace, kindness, patience. And it wasn't enough. Sometimes," he said quietly, "respect isn't given. Sometimes you take it back." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" He held my gaze. "You don't wait for someone else to decide your worth, especially not someone who's forgotten who showed up first." For the first time in days, I felt something sharp cut through the fog. Not anger, not even pain, resolve. I didn't know what it would look like yet. I just knew this silence, this standing on the outside of my own daughter's life, wasn't going to be the ending. As Pastor Collins left, he paused at the door. "She's not lost, Eleanor, just borrowed, and I suspect the lender has terms." His words hung there long after he was gone, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't the one who should be ashamed. It had been years since I touched the box. It lived beneath the guest room bed, tucked behind an old suitcase and a stack of blankets I never used. I kept it there, not because I forgot what was inside, but because I remembered too well. Some things you don't throw out, even when no one asked to see them again. But that morning, after Pastor Collins left, and Linda had gone back outside to tend the hydrangeas, I pulled it out. The cardboard was soft at the edges, the tape peeling slightly at the corners. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat with it for a long time before lifting the lid. At the top, the receipts. Dozens of them, faded and curling, co-pays from pediatric visits, tutoring invoices, dance class registrations, the orthodontist bill from 2011 with the note scribbled across the bottom, paid in full. Then the custody papers, not the glossy court ones Sam's father had framed in bitterness, but the messy, ink-smudged versions. The ones from the emergency hearing when he skipped town for good, and I was granted sole custody. I remember signing them in a courthouse hallway, Sam asleep in my lap, her backpack still shaped like a unicorn. Beneath those were the letters, folded sheets of loose-leaf paper, some written in pencil, others in glittery gel pen. Thank you for taking care of me when I was sick. I love you even when I'm mad. You're not my stepmom. You're just my mom. I laid them out like relics, each word written in a child's unsteady hand, each curve of the pen a memory that still ached. Linda walked in just as I was smoothing out the last letter. She looked at the table, then at me. Her voice was quiet. You thinking of showing her? I shook my head. She wouldn't hear it right now. She's too far under. Under what? I looked up. Whatever spell he has her in. Or maybe it's not even him. Maybe it's just the life she thinks she deserves now. Linda pulled out the chair beside me, sat down slowly. Then why now? Because I need to remember it wasn't all in my head, I said. That I wasn't some footnote in her story. She was silent for a while. Then she nodded. So what happens now? I didn't answer, not right away. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Michael Trent, my old family lawyer. The man who helped me with the custody paperwork when Sam's father vanished and left us both holding the wreckage. He answered on the third ring. Still brisk, still professional. Trent Law. It's Eleanor Carver, I said. I need to talk. 30 minutes later, I was in his office. The space hadn't changed. Same leather chairs, same smell of cedar and coffee. Michael sat across from me, glasses perched on his nose as he scanned the documents I laid out before him. You kept all this, he asked. Every piece. He nodded slowly. This isn't sentiment, Eleanor. This is evidence. Of what? Of history, of responsibility, of parenthood. You weren't just a caretaker. You were her legal, financial, and emotional guardian. These papers tell a story no one can rewrite. I swallowed. She left me out of her wedding, Michael. Like I was never part of her life. He leaned back in his chair. So what do you want to do? I took a long breath. I want to remind her of her past, of who stood beside her before anyone else did. Michael didn't flinch. Are you trying to claim something? I met his eyes. Not money, not property. He raised a brow. Truth, I said. I want it on paper, something she can't delete, unfollow, or smile through. He nodded. I can help with that. But once it's on paper, it becomes real. I want it real, I said. As I left his office, box in hand, the weight of it felt different. Not heavier, not lighter, just real. And as I got in the car, my phone buzzed. A message. From Sam, just one line. Please don't contact Greg again. They were in Venice now. At least that's what the latest carousel on Sam's Instagram said, titled Honeymoon High Day 5. There she was, posing on a balcony that looked out over the Grand Canal, dressed in something white and expensive, her hair done in soft waves like a bridal catalog ad. Greg stood beside her, shirt unbuttoned just enough to show off the watch I knew cost more than my car. The caption read, "Here's to new beginnings, with no distractions." I didn't need to guess what that meant. Each post was another performance. Cappuccinos in Paris, matching scooters in Rome, sunsets in Santorini. Every backdrop more extravagant than the last. Each smile a little more posed. It was like they were trying to spend their way into a new reality, one where the past didn't exist. But back here in Charlottesville, the story wasn't playing out the way they expected. By Friday, the whispers had turned into phone calls. Women from church, old neighbors, even the woman who ran the bakery near the square. They didn't invite you. You raised that girl. She let that man erase you. Sympathy came in casseroles and quiet outrage. Bags of groceries left on the porch. A bottle of wine from Margaret Bryce with a note that said, "You deserved better." It wasn't validation I was looking for, But when it came, it felt like breath after a long time underwater. Linda came in from town that afternoon. A little winded, hair wild from the breeze. She dropped her keys in the bowl and turned to me. I ran into Ben Harrison at the hardware store. I looked up. And? He's friends with Greg's cousin. Apparently at the rehearsal dinner, Greg stood up and said, and I quote, "We're starting fresh. No baggage." I set my mug down with more force than I meant to. Baggage. Linda's jaw was tight. You. I nodded slowly, letting the words settle. If I was baggage, I said. I was the one who carried her. There was no bitterness in my voice anymore, just clarity. Linda sat beside me. You know, most people wouldn't handle this with half your grace. I'm done being graceful, I said. I'm not out for revenge, but I won't be erased. Not by him. And not by her silence. As if summoned by the moment, my phone lit up with a message from Michael. Filed. He's not touching anything until the hearing. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The estate Sam's father had left, modest, but still something, wasn't in Greg's hands yet. Michael had filed the injunction just in time, citing undue influence and rushed asset reassignment. It wasn't a war yet, but the lines had been drawn. Linda glanced at the phone. So that's done. For now, I said. He can honeymoon all he wants, but the minute he gets back, he'll find out I'm not the ghost he thinks I am. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the wind shook the porch swing, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor. Then Linda looked at me. What if Sam never comes back around? I didn't flinch. She might not, I said. But I will not let her forget what it took to get her where she is. She can pretend, but I remember, and so does every woman who brought me soup this week. The doorbell rang. We both turned. Linda stood first, but I stopped her. Something in my chest shifted. Call it instinct or habit. I walked to the door and opened it. It wasn't Sam. It was a courier. He held out an envelope. For Eleanor Carver, from the Jeffersons. The name hit hard. I took it with steady hands. No return address, just their last name printed across the seal in clean, sharp script. Inside was something heavier than words. The seal on the envelope split with a quiet snap. No glitter, no handwriting, just crisp ivory paper embossed with a law firm's name I didn't recognize. Linda stood behind me as I unfolded the contents. Her breath caught. My eyes ran over the heading once, then again, slower. Petition for mental competency evaluation. Eleanor Carver. I didn't speak. Linda did. They're calling you unstable. No, I said flatly. They're trying to call me irrelevant. It was strategy, not concern. Greg's name was listed as the petitioner. Sam's followed, hers smaller, less bold, but they're all the same. Her signature, her approval, her silence. I read the fine print like scripture. Claims of erratic emotional conduct, declining capacity to reason, and most absurd of all, deteriorating judgment consistent with age-related decline. Linda hovered beside me, fists clenched. You passed every background check they ever threw at you for work. You're sharper than I am before my coffee. I know what this is, I said quietly. It's a paper coffin. They're trying to bury me under their version of the truth. Michael called within the hour. His voice was calm but clipped. We expected pushback, but I didn't think he'd come at you through this door. He knows I've got history, I said. And he knows Sam doesn't want to face it. He's hoping the court won't either. By the following Monday, I was in a beige, windowless room across from a psychiatrist I'd never met. The woman was pleasant, professional, but I could see it. How carefully she measured my tone, my pace, my eye contact. She asked questions that were meant to trip me, dates, events, logic problems. I answered everyone without hesitation. What would you do if you found a stamped envelope on the sidewalk, she asked. Check the address and drop it in the nearest mailbox, I replied. She didn't smile, just wrote it down. What does the phrase, "don't throw stones in glass houses" mean to you? That hypocrisy is loudest when you're standing on a pedestal someone else built. She finally looked up. You don't seem disoriented. I'm insulted, not confused. That seemed to satisfy her. When I left, I felt no relief, just a tightening focus. Michael was already preparing the next move. I've got a list, he said. Pastor Collins, Linda, two of your former supervisors from the Social Services Board. They're all willing to testify. To what? I asked. He didn't miss a beat. To the fact that this petition is fiction. I nodded. Good. Then let's make it public. Word spread faster than I expected. One of the deacons brought me lunch and shook his head. He really tried to frame you as unwell? A retired teacher left a voicemail. You spoke at Career Day for 10 years straight. My son still remembers what you told him. Your choices matter, even when no one claps. Sympathy swelled, but it wasn't pity, it was recognition. People remembered who I was. Sam had underestimated that. Or maybe Greg had taught her to forget. Linda came back from town with a look that told me something was brewing. People are choosing sides, she said. And Greg's not winning. I didn't smile. He doesn't need to win. He just needs me to stop. You're not going to. No, I said. Not now, especially not now. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through news alerts on my phone. Nothing official had been filed yet about the estate. But Michael was watching. Then my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I didn't recognize the number. I hit play. Greg's voice, calm, calculated. You should have walked away, Eleanor. Now you'll be the one explaining yourself, under oath. I didn't delete it. I forwarded it to Michael. Then I sat in the quiet of my kitchen and realized something had changed. This wasn't about inclusion anymore. This was a fight for narrative, and mine had just begun. Michael's call came at 9:17 a.m., a little earlier than usual. I had just set my coffee down and opened the window for some air. The breeze was cool, steady, grounding. Brace yourself, he said, before I could say hello. My stomach tightened. What now? I've been digging, he said, through public records, business filings, loan databases. Tell me. Greg Jefferson is broke, not just tight, broke. The consulting company? It's smoke and mirrors. 3 high-interest business loans in default. 2 lawsuits pending from unpaid contractors. He's leveraged against his car, his house, and his future. I didn't respond. I just sat very still, listening to the end of something I'd started suspecting a while ago. But here's the real kicker, Michael continued. The wedding, the honeymoon, the rings, the vineyard, the dress, all funded by one thing, Sam's inheritance. My pulse thudded in my ears. From her father's estate? Exactly. The trust you protected for 20 years. Greg had her sign a release clause in June. She gave him access to the funds, didn't tell anyone, and from the looks of it, they burned through almost a third of it already. I stood slowly, my hand resting on the back of the chair. Did she know what she was signing? That's hard to say, but she signed it. I walked into the kitchen, needing motion. I turned on the sink, then turned it off again. He knew I'd never have allowed that, I said. Michael's voice softened. That's why he shut you out. You were the firewall. Linda stepped inside, keys jangling in her hand. She took one look at me and knew. What is it? I covered the receiver. They used her inheritance to fund the wedding. Her lips parted, breath catching. Jesus, Michael was still talking. I'm filing a motion for financial discovery. If a judge grants it, we can subpoena all spending records related to the trust. Bank statements, investment withdrawals, real estate deals, everything. I nodded, more to myself than him. Do it. This'll escalate things, Eleanor. Once Greg realizes he's being exposed, he'll come hard. I'm counting on it. After I hung up, Linda and I sat at the table. I didn't touch my coffee. So that's it, she said. He used her. And now he's scared you'll prove it. No, I said. He's scared I already have. She hesitated. You think Sam knew? I think she thought she was saying yes to love, but she signed over her name like it was his to use. And now it is. Linda stared at me. That's why they cut you out. Not because you're difficult, because you ask questions. I laughed. Just once. Bitter. They didn't want a mother at the wedding. They wanted silence. That evening, I was folding laundry in the den when my phone lit up again. Unknown number, no caller ID. Same as before. I let it go to voicemail, then waited a beat before pressing play. Greg's voice again. Less polished this time, the mask slipping. You're playing a dangerous game, Eleanor. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to drag her through this. You're going to make her look weak. Is that what you want? Do you really want your daughter humiliated in court? I played it again, slower, louder. Linda came in from the hallway and caught the tail end of it. Her eyes darkened. Do you want me to respond? She asked. No, I said. I want him to keep talking. We sat in the quiet after. The TV was off. The sky outside had turned a dusky blue, the kind of color that feels like memory. She's still your daughter, Linda said gently. Even now, I nodded. And that's exactly why I won't let him reduce her to an accessory. I've seen men like him. They don't stop until they've rewritten the whole story and left you out of it. And you? I folded the last shirt slowly. I was never the story he wanted. I'm just the part that wouldn't go away. The sound of my cane tapping down the hallway echoed louder than I expected. Polished tile, empty corridors, early morning stillness. Everything in that courthouse seemed built to amplify discomfort. But I wasn't there to hide. Linda walked beside me in silence, her heels clicking out a steady rhythm. Michael was already waiting near the security checkpoint, his suit pressed, his expression unreadable. You good? He asked quietly, scanning me from head to toe. I'm not here to be good, I said. I'm here to be factual. We entered the courtroom just before the clerk called us forward. The benches were half full, curious locals, a few reporters, people who knew enough to suspect something interesting was about to unfold. Greg was already seated at the petitioner's table, flanked by his attorney, a sleek man with an expensive haircut and a watch that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage. Greg wore a smirk that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. Sam sat beside him, smaller somehow. She didn't look at me, not once. But I saw the way her hands twisted in her lap. The judge entered, a woman in her early 60s with an expression I couldn't read. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense tone. She reviewed the docket, called the case. Petition for mental competency review of Miss Eleanor Carver. Michael stood. Your Honor, we contest the grounds for this petition and request immediate dismissal. But in the event the court wishes to hear argument, we are prepared to proceed with documentation and witness testimony. Proceed, the judge said. Michael began with the box, not the emotional box, the real one, the one we'd brought to his office weeks ago. Receipts, custody orders, educational fees, medical bills, all itemized, filed, dated. These are not gifts, Michael said firmly, laying each piece of paper on the table like evidence in a criminal trial. This is the financial spine of a childhood, one Ms. Carver supported alone. Greg's attorney stood, voice smooth. Your Honor, many of these expenses were incurred during a time when Ms. Carver shared a household with the child's father. The gifts she provided over the years, while generous, are not legal obligations. They weren't gifts, I said, standing slowly. They were my job. The courtroom fell silent. I was awarded sole custody when Sam was 6. Her father left. I didn't. Everything in that box? That was survival. And none of it came with a thank you. The judge raised a hand gently. You'll have your moment, Miss Carver. For now, let's proceed with testimony. Michael nodded, then called his first witness, Pastor William Collins. Pastor Collins walked to the stand slowly, his Bible tucked beneath his arm like a personal talisman. He was steady, calm. When he spoke, it was like the courtroom itself leaned forward to listen. I've known Eleanor Carver for 32 years. I baptized her daughter. I watched her raise that child through storms I wouldn't wish on anyone. Were you present during the years her daughter lived solely in Eleanor's care? Michael asked. I was. Hospital visits, PTA meetings, emergency phone calls. I saw it all. And in your opinion, has Ms. Carver demonstrated any sign of cognitive decline or mental instability? None, he said simply. She's as sharp as the day I met her. Greg's attorney didn't cross-examine. Sam looked down. The judge scribbled something on her pad. Michael turned to her. Your Honor, we will next present statements from Eleanor's former supervisor at the county office and a signed affidavit from her physician confirming her medical and cognitive fitness. Very well, the judge said. We'll recess until 2 p.m. for review. The gavel struck. People started to murmur. As I stood to leave the table, Greg leaned towards Sam. He thought I couldn't hear, but I did. She's playing the sympathy card, he hissed. The judge will see through it. You just have to hold your ground. Sam didn't respond, but she looked up at me for the first time. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't contempt. It was doubt. The courtroom felt colder after the recess. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Or maybe it was just the shift, something invisible cracking beneath the surface. Greg sat stiffly at the table, jaw tight. Sam beside him, more withdrawn than before. Her posture curled inward now, like someone trying to occupy less space. Michael rose smoothly as the judge returned to her seat. He didn't waste time. "Your Honor," he began, "we'd like to continue our documentation review, specifically focusing on the financial history between Mrs. Carver and her daughter." The bailiff wheeled in a small cart stacked with files and binders. Our box, reorganized into a case. Michael began to pull them out one by one. "We have here a complete ledger of tuition payments, co-pays for medical visits, prescription costs, grocery bills, and therapy sessions for Samantha Carver from ages 6 to 23. Every item marked, cross-referenced with check images, bank transfers, and physical receipts." He laid out each document slowly, deliberately, no rush, letting the weight of every page sink in. These were not occasional gestures, he said. These were consistent, documented, long-term investments in her health, education, and well-being. Greg's attorney looked visibly agitated. He objected, called it irrelevant, overly sentimental. The judge raised a hand without even looking up. "Overruled. Let him finish." Then came the letters. Michael walked to the podium and held up a plastic sleeve, inside of which sat a folded piece of paper, lined notebook paper, glittering faded but still legible. "Exhibit 12, he said, "a note from Samantha Carver at age 9, found in Miss Carver's keepsake file." He cleared his throat and read aloud. "Dear Mom, thank you for being the only mom I had. I love you even when I'm mad. You make the best pancakes in the world. Love, Sam." I didn't look at Sam when he finished, but I heard her breath catch, just barely. Michael held up another. "Exhibit 13, age 11. I hope I grow up to be just like you, even when you're tired. You always stay." Silence blanketed the room. Greg shifted beside her, lips pressed into a line. Michael rested both letters on the table in front of the judge. "We submit these not for sentiment, but as evidence of relationship history, patterns, truths that were never meant to be erased." Sam's eyes had glossed over now. Her fingers clutched the edge of the table, one thumb moved in circles over her thumbnail, a habit she hadn't shaken since childhood. I didn't move, didn't cry. I just sat there, watching her carefully, while my heart folded in on itself. Beside me, Linda leaned in and whispered, "She remembers." And I knew she did. Every scraped knee I kissed, every panic attack I sat through at 3 a.m., the warm towels, the birthday candles, the forgiveness I offered freely, even when it cost me more than I let on. Greg leaned towards Sam as Michael returned to the table. "This is manipulation," he hissed under his breath. "Don't fall for this theater." Sam didn't reply, but her hand dropped from the table. The judge cleared her throat. "We will break for the day and resume testimony tomorrow morning. All exhibits will remain in court custody." She stood. The gavel struck, and the murmur of movement resumed. Outside the courtroom, I sat on a bench and let the day settle into my bones. Michael stepped out to take a call, and Linda disappeared to find tea. Sam emerged a few minutes later, trailed by Greg, who was already mid-rant. "You let that play out like a soap opera," he barked. "You sat there and did nothing." Her voice was soft, but sharp enough to cut. "They were my words, Greg." He stopped, stared at her. "You said it wouldn't get ugly," she added, eyes now locked on mine across the hallway. "But it already is." By the second morning, the courtroom had changed, not physically, but the energy. The silence was different now, no longer passive, but tense, bracing. Greg sat straighter than usual, a performance, not posture. Sam, however, had shifted entirely. The space between them looked wider, colder. She hadn't spoken to him once since arriving, not that I'd seen. Michael stood as the judge entered. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, we would like to enter a new exhibit pertaining to recent financial discovery relevant to the petitioner's motivations." The judge, Doyle, adjusted her glasses. "Proceed." Michael turned toward the display monitor as an assistant clipped in a document. This, he said, clicking the remote, is a loan agreement from a private creditor, dated 2 months before the Jefferson Carver wedding. Amount, $48,000. Borrower, Samantha Carver. There was a faint murmur across the gallery. Greg's attorney stood. Objection, that's outside the scope of the original. Overruled, Judge Doyle said quickly. Let him continue. Michael didn't flinch. We have 4 more, each within a 90-day window. 3 signed in Samantha's name, 2 under joint marital status, before the wedding legally occurred. He advanced through the documents. Each loan was used to pay vendors directly associated with the Jefferson wedding. Floral deposits, vineyard rental, photographer. We confirmed via transaction tracing. He paused, then dropped the weight. All 4 loan contracts were signed without Samantha Carver's knowledge. The signatures were forged. The silence turned electric. I saw the judge's brow lift. Michael clicked again, revealing a side-by-side slide. Here is a comparative analysis between the signatures used on these contracts and verified exemplars of Ms. Carver's legal signature, from university registration and her driver's license. The 2 signatures looked close enough to fool most, but the slant was off, the pressure inconsistent. The spacing was wider, looser. Judge Doyle leaned forward. Are we prepared to verify this claim? We are, Michael said. We've retained a certified forensic document examiner. He is here today. The bailiff opened the door, and in walked a small, gray-haired man with a calm, methodical presence. His name was Dr. Halvers. He took the stand, raised his right hand, and swore in. Over the next 10 minutes, he walked the court through pressure points, pen flow, spacing metrics. It was clinical, precise, and devastating. In your professional opinion, Michael asked, did Samantha Carver sign these documents? Dr. Halvers didn't hesitate. Absolutely not, the gallery burst into soft gasps. The jury, though not needed in a hearing like this, looked visibly disturbed. Even the judge's pen paused mid-note. Sam turned her head sharply toward Greg, her face drained. You forged my name, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Greg leaned toward her quickly. Sam, it's not what you think. You forged my name, she repeated, louder this time. That's fraud. Sam, sit down. No. Michael let the silence hang for a moment, then spoke softly. Your Honor, the motivation behind this petition, to question Ms. Carver's mental state, now has context. We believe this was a preemptive move by Mr. Jefferson to isolate Eleanor Carver and prevent her from interfering with financial abuse involving Samantha Carver's estate and inheritance. Judge Doyle stared down at Greg. Do you have a response to the forgery claim? Greg stood, flushed. This is a setup. They don't understand how joint planning works. We discussed it. We were consolidating. Sir, she cut in. You'll have your chance under oath. He sat. Too fast. Across the room, Sam looked at me. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. But she looked like a woman who'd just been told her house had been burning all along. I leaned toward Linda, my voice barely audible. I raised her better than this. Linda gave the smallest nod. And now she knows it. Judge Doyle tapped her pen against her folder. We will resume this hearing with sworn testimony from Mr. Jefferson after lunch. This court is not only reviewing mental competency, but motive. And motive, she said, staring hard at Greg, is becoming abundantly clear. Gavel. Silence. Break. Outside the courtroom, Michael turned to me. That was the bomb. I didn't smile. Let's see what rises from the ashes. She found me in the hallway just before court resumed. The buzz of reporters and observers floated around us like background noise. But in that moment, it was just the 2 of us. Sam, standing across from me in the pale light near the vending machines, her shoulders slightly hunched, arms crossed as though trying to hold herself together. I didn't know, she said. I looked at her for a long time, let her feel the weight of that silence. Let her wonder if I believed her. The loans, she clarified, eyes darting toward the courtroom doors. The signatures, I didn't know. I nodded slowly. But you signed the trust release. She winced. Greg said it was a standard clause, that it would help simplify the estate. I didn't think. No, I interrupted. Not cruelly, just firm. You didn't. Her chin trembled, but she held it. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. You chose him over me. And I don't say that to hurt you. I say that because it's the truth. But what you do now, that's still a choice. She looked down at the tile, at her own shoes. He said you'd try to turn me against him. I almost laughed. He didn't need my help with that. Her breath caught. Not quite a sob. Not yet. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly. None of us ever do. She nodded, wiped under one eye. What happens if I testify? That depends, I said. Do you plan to tell the truth? Michael appeared just then, stepping out from the elevator bay. He didn't interrupt, just waited, eyes scanning Sam's face like a seasoned poker player sizing up a turn card. If she testifies honestly, he said calmly, she saves herself. This is Greg's storm, but if she lies to protect him, she'll drown with him. Sam blinked, lips parted, caught between two tides. Greg emerged from a nearby conference room and spotted us. His expression darkened instantly. He strode over with the energy of someone who's already losing control, but hasn't admitted it to himself yet. What is this? He barked. Some kind of side meeting? No one's hiding, Michael said coolly. I wasn't talking to you. Sam stepped back instinctively. That told me everything I needed to know. You okay? Greg asked her, softer now, trying to dial it down. But the shift was too fast, too thin. Sam's eyes met mine again, just for a breath. And I saw something new this time. Calculation. She was thinking. Greg leaned in toward her, his voice low but sharp. They're manipulating you. That woman has always played victim. You know that. Michael raised a brow. We're ready when you are, Sam. Just tell the court what you know, not what you've been told. The bailiff called the court back into session. Greg reached for her elbow. Sam didn't flinch, but she didn't let him touch her either. Back in the courtroom, the judge took her seat, flipping through papers as the room settled. Next witness, she said. Ms. Carver? Sam stood slowly. The entire room followed her with their eyes. Greg's hand curled into a fist on the table. She walked toward the stand like someone still learning how to walk again. Every step unsure, but forward. Linda leaned close to me and whispered, This is it. But I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure which direction my daughter would choose next. Sam's hands trembled slightly as she took the oath, but her voice, when it finally emerged, was clear. Not strong, not yet, but honest. And that was more than enough. Michael stood at the podium, posture steady, his tone gentle. Ms. Carver, thank you for being here. We know this isn't easy. She nodded. Barely. Can you describe your relationship with Mr. Greg Jefferson? She swallowed. He's my husband. We've been married for 3 months. And your relationship with Ms. Eleanor Carver? Sam turned to look at me. Her gaze lingered. A flicker of something passed through it. Recognition, maybe, or regret. She's my mother, she said softly. Michael paced once, slowly. Sam, you were not present during the filing of the petition to declare your mother mentally incompetent. Can you tell us why? Sam looked down at her lap. Because Greg handled it. I signed things. I didn't read everything. I trusted him. Did you know that trust was being used to block your mother from legal standing in your life? She hesitated. No, not the full extent. Michael nodded, then approached the table. He picked up the copies of the loan documents and displayed them on the overhead screen. These signatures tied to private loans totaling nearly $160,000. Do these belong to you? She blinked. Her breath stuttered. No, they're not mine. Were you aware these loans existed? No. Did you authorize Mr. Jefferson to sign your name in any capacity? No, she said again, this time louder. I didn't know. I didn't know any of it. A low murmur rose across the courtroom. The judge glanced down over her glasses, silencing it with a look. Michael paused just long enough to let the silence thicken. Did Mr. Jefferson ever ask you to distance yourself from your mother? Yes, Sam said, looking directly at the judge. He said, if I didn't set boundaries, she'd control our lives. He told me leaving her out was the only way to move forward, to protect what we were building. And did that include signing the release of your trust funds? Her voice cracked. Yes. Michael's voice softened. Do you regret that decision? Tears welled at the corners of her eyes. She nodded. I do. No further questions. Greg shifted visibly, arms crossed, his face flushed. His lawyer remained still, clearly stunned. Judge Doyle cleared her throat. Ms. Carver, in your own words, why did you go along with this for so long? Sam took a deep breath. Because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of losing what I thought was stability. But that was never real, and now I know. Everything Greg said about my mother was meant to isolate me, so he could take what he wanted. The words landed like a blade in the room. Greg shot to his feet. You lying! Mr. Jefferson, the judge snapped. Sit down. He didn't. You manipulative little, he growled, pointing at Sam. I gave you everything, everything. And now you're throwing me under the bus to crawl back to her? Greg, Sam said, standing. Voice steelier now. Stop. The bailiff moved toward him. Greg backed up a step, face flushed, sweat shining under the lights. She's turning you against me, just like I said she would. She's been doing this your whole life, the gallery murmured again. Judge Doyle banged her gavel once. Remove him from the courtroom. 2 bailiffs flanked him, grabbing his arms. He fought them, sloppily. Nothing like the composed man he played just days ago. You'll regret this, he screamed at Sam. She'll ruin you, just like she ruined everything else. They dragged him toward the back exit. He was still shouting when the door slammed behind him. Silence returned. Michael stood slowly. Your Honor, given this testimony and the petitioner's behavior, we request immediate dismissal of the petition and formal findings of bad faith. The judge exhaled and nodded. Request noted. I'll deliver my ruling tomorrow at 10. Gavel. Court adjourned. Sam sat there for a moment longer than anyone else, still on the stand, still holding it all. Then, finally, she looked at me. No tears, just the unspoken acknowledgement that truth, however painful, had finally come out. I didn't nod, didn't cry, but I let her see that I saw her. And for the first time in a long time, I think she believed me. The early morning light streamed through the courthouse doors like second chances, soft, hopeful, deliberate. Reporters huddled near the entrance, cameras clicking and mics extended. But nobody was paying attention yet. Every pair of eyes was on the courtroom ahead. Inside, the tension settled like dust in the air. Every seat was filled. Curious onlookers, community faces, a few journalists, and local ministers who'd come to bear witness. The jury box remained purposefully empty, but it felt full of expectation. Judge Doyle entered with her signature calm, robes cascading behind her like a quiet storm. She paused at the bench, letting the silence hold its weight before speaking. I have reached a decision. The hush deepened, not polite courtroom quiet, but the hush of truths about to land. In the petition for mental competency review of Ms. Eleanor Carver, she said, voice measured but firm, the court rules in favor of the respondent. A ripple of collective exhale filled the courtroom. Relief arrived softly, like a promise finally kept. The petition is dismissed with prejudice, the judge continued. The evidence, testimony, financial records, expert analysis is clear. Ms. Carver possesses full cognitive ability and sound judgment. It was as though the room leaned in closer. But this decision is not merely procedural, she said, adjusting her glasses. Given the documented fraudulent activity, unsigned and forged loans, unauthorized access to Ms. Carver's inheritance, the court is referring this case for criminal proceedings against Mr. Jefferson on charges of fraud and forgery. The words reverberated. Cameras flashed. Voices broke in truncated exclamations. Sam exhaled sharply, like air had been held in her lungs for too long. I held her gaze, steady, letting her feel her own strength reflected back. Judge Doyle pressed on. Furthermore, Ms. Carver's assets and the trust funds in question will receive court-appointed protection. No further monetary action or transfers are permitted without fiduciary oversight. This was what we'd fought for, not vengeance, but protection, dignity restored. Restitution shall be issued to Ms. Carver's estate, the judge added. All improperly diverted funds will be returned. This court stands firm in recognizing both her emotional and financial investments in her daughter's upbringing. I nodded once, quietly, but with the full weight of every sleepless night that had led here. Greg sat across the bench, shoulders bowed. expression blank. His eyes drifted to Sam, not with anger, but with something more brittle, regret, maybe. There was no unseen jury applause, but as the gavel fell, the collective weight of rightness settled in the room like a tide. Court is adjourned. The rustle and hum returned. Phones snapped. Reporters surged forward. Yet, for a moment, everything sounded distant. Sam and I stood. I guided her toward the exit with one arm. Another arm wrapped around me, Linda's steady presence. Outside, the spring air felt different, softer, as though the world recognized healing. Reporters pressed forward. Ms. Carver, how does it feel? What will you do next? Any message for your daughter? I breathed in. We're done hiding, I said, voice steady. Now we build. Sam squeezed my hand, tears glistening in her eyes, not broken tears, but the ones born from truth. Linda appeared with cups of coffee, her own relief clothed in warmth. You did it, she said, not as boast, but as fact. Sam quietly said, I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't answer. Instead, I drew her closer in the midst of the storm of cameras and words. In that moment, nothing else mattered but the woman standing beside me, her mother. Michael approached, nodding with restrained pride. The judge has made it final. That was all we needed. I forced a smile. Yes, but more than that. He looked at Sam, now standing with fragile steadiness. She'll be okay. So will we, I whispered. And as the cameras snapped again, I held her, silent but sure. Together, we would step into a new day. The morning air had a new clarity when I stepped outside, still cool, softened by dawn. Local newspapers lay strewn on the coffee table as I entered. Bold headlines announced Greg Jefferson's arrest, fraud, forgery, and financial malfeasance. His face, captured in a desperate mugshot, glowed from every screen. A man exposed, stripped of charm, unraveling in public. The facade fell flat in that harsh glare. I lingered by the front window as a neighbor walked past, offering a silent nod. There was respect in her gesture, tempered by relief. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of shame. I felt seen, as though taking back control hadn't just been a legal fight. It had been a reclamation of what dignity meant. Inside, routine was a healing act. The court-appointed fiduciary had secured my estate, but now, with authority restored, I reclaimed small tasks, balancing books, approving insurance, preparing tuition projections. These once basic responsibilities now carried intentionality, roots for the life I was rebuilding. I paused at the ledger for a long moment, letting the reality settle. Linda looked up from her seat in the living room, concern still awake in her eyes. You won, she said softly. And more than that, you got it right. I nodded, chest tight. It cost me my family, I said, but it restored my dignity. We sat together for a while, the shared silence more powerful than any words. Later that afternoon, I found a neatly folded letter slipped through the mail slot, Sam's handwriting looping across the page, holding both bravery and contrition. Dear Mom, I don't know how to begin. I'm sorry for denying what you always were for me. I was drawn into someone else's promise, and I lost sight of truth. You raised me with love and wisdom, and I let fear blind me. I see you now. Thanks for holding space, even when I didn't. I'm trying to make peace, starting here with honesty. I love you. Sam, my breath caught. I pressed the letter to my chest until the edges softened beneath my palm. I placed it beside the ledger, truth held both in ink and accounting. That evening, the porch became my sanctuary. Fireflies flickered through the grass. Crickets sang steady rhythms. With my feet propped on the railing, Linda beside me, I let the night wash over us. What now? She asked. I looked at the deepening sky. We rebuild, quietly, slowly, on solid ground. Sam's room remained closed. Her journals, sketches, dreams, pains, sat untouched atop a shelf. She'd return to them in time. I wouldn't rush her. Now, each morning felt deliberate, coffee brewed, bills from responsible hands sorted, schedules plotted with care. It wasn't glamorous. It was necessary. Still, my heart always nudged toward her door, hoping for a knock, a tentative return, maybe a tea shared in silence. That letter proved she remembered. Maybe that was enough for now. I'd read it again, maybe mark a line, let her know I'd been waiting. Because what this fight had taught me, beyond legal victory, was that things like betrayal may cut deep. But love, when paired with truth, never fades. It's not fragile, it's enduring. Around the table later, the room felt lighter. A bouquet of daisies Sam had left days ago greeted me with quiet brightness. I reached out, brushed a petal. "Thank you, Sam," I whispered, though she wasn't there. Tomorrow I'd open the window to let sunlight fill every corner again. I'd review schedules, draft a letter, maybe one day soon, Sam and I would sit down at this table again. Because this wasn't an ending. It was the start of something new. I found myself speaking it aloud, as much to the night as to hope itself. This is home. The cicadas hummed in agreement. The morning light spilled over the rolling hills as I stepped onto the porch of the farmhouse, an invitation to a fresh beginning. The house, silent and still, felt like a wide-open hand welcoming me home. Inside, the hearth stood ready, polished wood gleaming, curtains billowing softly in the autumn breeze. Every detail, quilted blankets draped over chairs, the hand-spun rugs warmed by sunlight, the daisies in mismatched vases, spoke of love reassembled. I closed the front door behind me and inhaled the scent of cedar and dust and something like possibility. Linda followed, shaking off leaves from her coat, her gaze soft with pride. "You did it," she said simply, her voice steady. I smiled, brushing fingertips over the mantel where fresh photos stood in gentle frames. One of Sam and me in a sunlit field, a reminder that healing includes memory. It was quiet, but in that quiet, I felt grounded. The renovation had been more than structural. I'd repainted peeling walls in soft tones of cream and sage, replaced warped floorboards with reclaimed oak, reupholstered chairs in a patchwork of fabric that felt both rooted and renewed. The chores were practice, learning to trust this place again, piece by piece. As afternoon settled in, the doorbell rang, steady and welcoming. First came Pastor Collins carrying a pie with warm spices and fruit, eyes crinkling in that familiar way of quiet joy. He hugged me long, and the warmth that, until now, I'd sheltered carefully, unfurled inside my chest. Then neighbors arrived, each bringing something from their kitchens. Roasted vegetables, bread still warm, cookies sweetened with home-canned preserves. Their eyes were kind, a blend of respect and relief. It wasn't loud approval, but I felt the tension in their shoulders, the way they let their voices lower, the thoughtfulness with which they set dishes on wood tables. We sat around the living room, candles flickering, warm light sketching comfort into corners. Spoons clinked softly as stories came, of harvest yields, garden failures, children's poems, and old Willa Cather collections. There was no weight to the chatter, just community gently knitting itself back around me. Pastor Collins raised his glass of cider. "To strength hidden beneath stillness," he said, "to rebuilding with love." The room exhaled in laughter and agreement. I felt my heart, which had lately been wound tight, begin to unfurl too. The fire was lit just right, the flames watching quietly, illuminating faces with gentle flicker. I settled into an armchair, knitting needle in hand. An old habit revived, grounding me. The rhythmic click of yarn and the hum of conversation felt like home. As dusk deepened outside and the lanterns on the porch began to glow, Linda stepped into the corner by the window. "They came to honor you," she whispered. I nodded. "We haven't just restored walls," I said softly. "We restored belonging." No one said Sam's name. It hovered in the room, respectful of absence, yet the ache of missing her was gentle, like a quiet echo beckoning forgiveness, or perhaps hope. Later, as laughter trickled out the door and the moon rose pale above the fields, I stepped onto the porch with Linda by my side. Fireflies blinked gently in the tall grass, like tiny stars brought to earth. "This," I said into the night, "this is my celebration." The silence answered me softly, as though the house itself had whispered its approval. Back inside, the rooms were already humming with peace. I passed Sam's bedroom, door closed, journals and colored pencils on her desk. I paused, brushing my fingers across the gathering dust, more forgiving now. I didn't crowd the space. I honored it. In the kitchen, I poured one last cup of tea and carried it to the living room hearth. The fire was low, coals glowing like red embers of endurance. I set the cup beside me and leaned back. I whispered again, softer this time, to the corners of the house and the quiet within it. Thank you. Because from the quiet, I was learning again how to be seen, how to trust that rebuilding isn't just a structure, it's an embrace. One day, a step at a time, I knew Sam might return. Not to a victory lap, but to a home held, open, in peace. And in the peaceful hum of that farmhouse, under the stable rhythm of hearth and hard-won hope, I finally felt it. Not the end of a fight, but the beginning of a gentle, real life. The late afternoon sun warmed the farmhouse porch like a promise that had finally been fulfilled. I stepped outside, dressed for what was less a celebration and more a reclamation. My birthday, with no fanfare, no grand speeches. Just the people who had made this broken year into one worthy of honor. Inside, candles flickered atop the oak table where Linda arranged the centerpiece. Freshly picked wildflowers woven into simple glass jars, their petals as delicate as new beginnings. A cake sat at the table's center, its pale frosting inscribed with words that made my heart pulse. To strength. I carried that cake outside under the glow of the porch light. Soft laughter greeted me. There, seated in mismatched chairs, sat familiar faces. Linda, Pastor Collins, neighbors who had shown up unannounced at my darkest hours. And between them, flickers of community restored. Pastor Collins looked at me over the candlelight, eyes bright with gentle affection. He raised his glass, tea warmed and steeped in jasmine, and waited. The laughter quieted. The warm hush of evening enveloped us. To the woman who raised generations, he said, voice steady with admiration. The toast was carried by the quiet weight it carried, not just for me, but for every moment of unseen labor, every late-night tear, every quiet choice that had shaped lives. To the woman who held strong even when she felt undone. The words didn't need fanfare. Each person around the table carried its echo in their gaze. I turned the cake so everyone could see. To strength, I whispered, tracing the letters with a fingertip. Strength had never been showy. It had been steady, a foundation I'd spent years forgetting I still possessed. I took my slice, the frosting tinged with sweet raspberries, the taste soft and familiar. I looked up at the gathered faces, soft faces not looking back with pity, but with acknowledgement. And I felt, for the first time in years, whole. The candlelight danced across wooden boards, across hands holding tea, across faces shaped by seasons of loss, love, and healing. I lifted my cup. I thought about weddings this year, I said quietly, and I realized they come and go. My voice wavered, but only for a moment. But what lasts is legacy. The choices that echo through years when no one is looking. Linda smiled, eyes glistening. Together we settled into an evening shaped not by ceremony, but by knowing. A neighbor recounted how I helped her when her plumbing gave out. Another spoke of the casseroles delivered when my heart first broke. Pastor Collins recounted how I prayed through storms for church youth. Each story was a testament to life lived in grounding service, a covenant held deeper than any vow. Later, I joined the night outside. Porch lanterns hummed soft, golden light across the boards. The air was crisp with promise. Hands unclasped, the final glances of meal-laced warmth drifted behind me. I stood there alone for a moment, candlelight flickering from the window behind me like a heartbeat. I placed the empty cake plate on a small bench by the door, its inscription still visible, glowing in gentle shadow. To strength, I whispered into the night, this is my vow. No audience, no applause, just the steady river of night, the echo in my bones. The hush didn't shrink. It stretched into new possibility. Tomorrow I would rise and sift through the ledger again, plan the autumn garden, maybe sort through Sam's old journals, step by step, ordinary by ordinary. That would be my legacy. I took a slow breath, listening to the hum of cicadas winking through dark hollows, the soft rustle of leaves overhead. Then a distant glow, Sam's window across the field, flickered faint, dark, hopeful. I could just make it out through rows of bending flowers. I turned back to the house, warmth spilling from the open door. Whispering into the quiet night, I said again, louder, This is my real vow." The lanterns nodded in the dark,